This is the primal scream of a dying regime.
Pray for our enemies, because we're going medieval on these people. You're just not got a free shot on all these networks lying about the people. The people have had a belly full of it. I know you don't like hearing that. I know you try to do everything in the world to stop that, but you're not going to stop it. It's going to happen.
And where do people like that go to share the big lie? MAGA media. I wish in my soul, I wish that any of these people had a conscience.
Ask yourself, what is my task and what is my purpose? If that answer is to save my country, this country will be saved.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Friday, 24 July, Year of our Lord 2026. I didn't realize until last night after Wade Miller said it, I didn't quite realize that the House had actually skipped out. It was gone. They're gone. I want you now. Theoretically, the August recess was not supposed to start for these guys until I guess the first week of August or whatever. But they weren't back to 14 September. Originally planned. They're gone. Now they're supposedly back Labor Day weekend or whatever, but they're gone. You know why they're gone? They're gone because it's not like they're going to go back and have town halls and start campaigning hard. They're gone because they want to avoid tough questions from people, particularly on this Section 219, exactly what's going on, why there was no debate, what can be done about this, and many more things. So we'll have kind of ideas or concepts about if you do have a town hall or if you do run into your congressman at getting a cup of coffee, you know, the types of things that might be helpful to bring up, because it is all important for the MAGA movement that we hold serve here in these midterm elections. Also with Thune in the same, you know, we had Wade Miller on last night. Wade Miller's a CRA, one of the smartest guys out there. You know, that was, my brain hurt after that was over. Right. All these perturbations, and what they all are, let's be blunt, they're all gimmicks. They're different gimmicks to get around a recalcitrant Senate about the Save America Act, what is absolutely central. We're going to play a clip. We're going to do something different. We're going to go to Matthew Taylor right now at Liberty Plaza and discuss kind of, I think, this new appreciation of nationalism that is coming up as one of the great things about the 250th reconsideration and commemoration and celebration of our revolution. But in the next block, we're going to do a cold open, and the cold open's got Ezra Klein and one of his guests on his podcast that explains better than anyone why what President Trump released last night and voter integrity and stealing of elections in the stolen 2020 election is inextricably linked to the invasion of our country and the taking over of our country by illegal immigrants, these phony, quote unquote, legal immigrant deals, and the people behind them, the nations behind them, the power behind them, the corporate power behind them, the oligarchs behind them, the money on Wall Street behind them, and the dark money behind them. This is kind of the Gordian knot we have to cut, and we're going to have to do it. They had this off-site thing at the, Axios said all the leaders are coming for, President Trump's campaign. And they came out yesterday and put out that what they're really going to emphasize is the big, beautiful bill, the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. Those are all populist wins, and they were great elements of the big, beautiful bill. But it's like you're seeing in the polling for the sealing the border. The President Trump sealed the border in 60 days. Maybe 90 days. It's unbelievable. It's heroic. But voters, they take that as, yes, he's serious. If he tells us something, he's going to be serious in the future. So we'll give him credit for that. But look, it's just human nature. I would like to say it's something different. But it's like, okay, what have you done for me today? That was yesterday. It resonates, but it doesn't resonate enough to actually win. It's powerful because it shows you, if you say you're going to do something, I'm going to do it. And closing the border was absolutely essential to stop the invasion that Biden and the NGOs and these radicals, as you see, work on every day. So we're going to tie all this together and show how it impacts exactly where we are today as a country. Most importantly, the solutions. And we're going to have Mark Morgan on here. We're going to talk about internal enforcement, mass deportations, all of it. But I want to go down. Matthew, once again, tell us where you are and why is this so important? This is kind of, I believe, in the entire celebration in the States, everything on the mall, everything has been done because this is an ongoing process, that this may be the most important legacy of everything that we've done up to date for the commemoration of the revolution, because it gets back not just to simply core values, it does it in an artistic manner, right, that calls us to our higher purpose. It's very powerful, and it's going to be there for a while. And you can go and tell the stories and talk about the spirit of liberty, and it's the great legacy of President Trump of this celebration, although it's gone under the radar somewhat. The New York Times today has an incredible piece. If we can put that incredible piece on you, Matthew, as I've told people for years, you're one of the most serious artists in the MAGA movement, right? As I told the New York Times, you're an artist first and kind of MAGA conservative second, but the manifestation, and this comes also from Vince Haley. And Vince is one of the biggest brains, been in the White House forever, a speechwriter, head of the Domestic Policy Council, one of the smartest people we have, but also understands how you have to kind of call people to raise up their inner greatness, embrace it, and use that as the fight ahead. So tell us where you are and why is this kind of the most important pivot point we have now in the imperial capital to talk about our revolution and what it means for us today and in the future, sir?
Well, Steve, I'm here at Freedom Plaza, and Freedom Plaza is right next to the White House, at the top of the monumental core in Washington, D.C., and we're standing among an amazing new installation of 22 statues and 21 original statues that basically tell the entire story of the revolution from the perspective of the common man. A lot of these statues in this park are people that are either unknown or lesser known founding fathers like Caesar Rodney, but it shows that ordinary citizens and ordinary people can do extraordinary things. It also shows that basically we are back to building big things again. This idea that we cannot build things, that we cannot build big things, we cannot install statues and do these things. That's the America of the past. That's been given to China and these other places. That's just not true. This place stands as a monument to the fact that America is America first in building, America first in art. We are back and we are building bigger than ever. And of course, under the president, he has great visions for Washington and great visions for building big things. And so come here and bring your family. I come here almost every day just to see citizens from across the country and actually also globally come here and read these stories of these individual soldiers. We have 6 black patriots and 6 white patriots. We have a resurrected Caesar Rodney statue. We have the largest prison ship martyr memorial in the country, one of, I think, of only 2. And of course, the plaza itself has been restored because of the vision of this administration to make DC beautiful again. And of course, as a local, I greatly appreciate that. But this is just the beginning. This is just the start of reasserting America's dominance in creativity and in building and in aesthetics. And so, art to me is very important. As you said, culture is very important to me. And this was an opportunity, thanks to Vince Haley, to allow me to be a sculptor again and design things and build things for the citizens. And so I'm eternally grateful to Vince, and I'm eternally grateful to the American people for coming here and visiting this beautiful gift that we've given them.
This reawakening of American nationalism, because we're a populist nationalist movement, and the emphasis in the first part has been a little more populist, although, as you know, I'm the first to say it ain't populist enough, particularly on the economic side. The nationalism now, the America First part of this, the nationalism, I think, is deservedly getting more traction. I've worked for you for, 18 years or so. Dave Bossie, worked with Dave Bossie. Very early on in our first films, what we were talking about was this kind of the Red-Green Alliance. This we could see it happening, and we had discussed it in our films. This Marxism combined with jihadism that was going to be the central threat domestically here to the United States of America. You could see it happening in London. You could hear it happening in France. Freedom Plaza and what Vince and you have conceived of and then built in record time is one of the most important parts of how you counter this argument. Right now, we have a capitalist system with almost no capitalists. We have to sort that out. This is why the polling saying, well, these young people don't really understand capitalism, what they know, they don't like. But in any type of war you have, particularly narrative war, the first thing you have to do is take the moral high ground. You have to take and you have to inspire people for their deepest, in the depths of their soul. That is exactly what this does. We go back to the founding revolutionary generation. We go back to the nation builders of this country. We look at the arc of our story. Imperfect as it is, you get the inspiration that, yes, this country is a solution for mankind, but we have to do it here in the United States. That's why Freedom Plaza, you've done the prison ships, you've done the soldiers, right? You've got that magnificent statue. If you can give us a second on the Spirit of Liberty, it's a great kickoff to the great fight. If you're gonna fight what Mamdani stands for and all the other Marxist jihadists, you better get it together to take the high ground first and then hit them, sir.
Well, absolutely. You brought up the Spirit of Liberty, and the Spirit of Liberty is one of the focal points of this exhibition. She is a 21st century icon of liberty and freedom that follows in the tradition of the Statue of Liberty and the Statue of Freedom. You know, we have these statues and we look back and we go, oh, that's a long time ago. That's 100, 150 years ago. She is now. She holds the Declaration of Independence in one of her hands, a complete replica of the Declaration. And she holds a sword in the other side of her hand. And on her base, it tells the entire story of the revolution. There's a relief of the signing of the Declaration. There's a relief of the crossing of the Delaware. And there's a relief of the surrender at Yorktown. And what she is here to do is create a brand new 21st century icon of something that represents what all of the people in this plaza fought and died for. This freedom that is always, as Reagan said, one generation away from disappearing. And so again, the first thing you do if you want to destroy a civilization like this is destroy their statues, tear down their past, eliminate the past. And Caesar Rodney, of course, was torn down in 2020. He was actually not taken down by rioters. He was actually taken down by the government in Delaware and put in a box. So we went and we found him and we re-erected him in this plaza. And so everything about this plaza, from the citizen soldier to the Spirit of Liberty, to Caesar Rodney's ride, to the prison ship memorial, it basically exemplifies American exceptionalism embodied in a space, in a civic space. So you can experience it and you can be inspired by it. You can walk out saying, wow, that guy, he was just a professor and he faced off against 2,000 British soldiers and then they killed him and we won the war anyway. So that's really what you need to leave here with. You need to leave here with this idea that this is real. These are real people just like you and me, and then enjoy the beauty of it. I mean, aesthetics still matter. You know, even as the Duchamp modernist that I am, you know, I still I love classical artwork as well. So please come to Freedom Plaza and enjoy the statues and walk away inspired.
Hang on for 1 second. I just want to hold you for a quick minute. I know we got to get our cameraman back over to the White House. But just hang on. We'll take a short commercial break. I just want to come on and mention the article, make sure everybody reads it. Matthew Taylor, working with Vince Haley at the White House, one of the big brains in back of Freedom Plaza. Just incredible. Short break. Two things. We got two specials, and I want to make sure everybody takes full advantage of it. One is Chapter, and the number there is 845 War Room at Chapter, 845 War Room. You get a free, no obligation consultation on your Medicare. Nothing could be more complicated. It is mind-numbing, right? 845 War Room. Colby and the team have a system of consultants. They are all data-based. They will look at go through all the perturbations, all the data, and look to show you not just where you can save money, but get the optimum plan, which we think is most important. 845 War Room. Also, Home Title Lock. 25% off a two-year order for Home Title Lock. 25% off in celebration of the 250th birthday. Now that we know that AI can break out of containment and have a cyber attack on other companies, trust me, they can get a cyber attack on your title. HomeTitleLock.com, promo code Steve25. Check it out today.
War Room. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, we're going to do a long cold open here. So, Matthew, where do people go to see the Spirit of Liberty? Where do they go to see all of this? Where do they go right now?
You can go to Freedom Plaza. It's at 14th and Pennsylvania. It's near the Willard, near the City Hall, and near the White House. And you can find out more about Freedom Plaza on the National Park Service's website.
Thank you, brother. Great article on the New York Times. We'll push it out, and I'll talk to you after the show.
Thank you.
We got an amazing cold open this morning. We want to start kick off the day with Matthew. Let's go to the cold open. I will read afterwards.
Of overreach, the Republican chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jim Jordan, is now asking Trump's DOJ to investigate former special counsel Jack Smith. Late last night, Jordan sent a criminal referral to Todd Blanche, accusing Smith of lying to Congress about his investigation into Trump's effort to overturn the 2020 election.
Now, folks, let's be clear. There's no evidence, none, zero, nada, nilch, that Jack Smith lied about anything under oath, period. But we do know the president and his allies want to punish Smith for telling the truth about the president's actions. And the stunt follows repeated calls for Trump and from others around Smith to be prosecuted. Tonight, Smith's legal team is fighting back. Smith's lawyers have sent a letter to Jordan and Blanche saying this absurd criminal referral, quote, reflects a chilling eagerness to weaponize the justice system. You've got a statement from Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskins on vindictive criminal referrals. This is what he said yesterday. This referral deliberately distorts and misstates the facts, including what questions the Republicans actually asked at Mr. Smith's interview. The Republicans fault Mr. Smith for not reading the minds of congressional investigators and not for volunteering information they didn't ask for. This is absurd. Mr. Smith may be telegenic, but he's not telepathic. Very true statement. And this is all out of this effort now, as we saw with Josh Hawley and his crazy, leaving out a significant part of the point in the question, saying that that Mr. Smith deliberately lied, that he, lied before Congress. Everybody looking at this know that didn't happen. Yes. What's your take on that, knowing Jack Smith, having been in that process and that crucible with him? I said this about Jack Smith. I've never met the man. I just observed the man from a great distance. And he strikes me as someone you just don't want to trifle with at the end of the day. At the end of the day, this is a brother you just don't want to get in close quarters with, because you will find out otherwise. And I think that is more threatening to Trump than anything else, because he is relentless in his pursuit of justice. And that's why this criminal referral crap is being leveled up right now.
Yeah, so I've known Jack Smith for a long time. When he was chief of the public integrity section, then I was the spokesman for the criminal division. So he is somebody that just does what he should, mm-hmm. right? He follows the facts. He does the right thing in the right way. And if he felt that he could walk away from that case, he would have. And so I think what people see is they are trying to manufacture anything they can to make life difficult for him, mm-hmm. because the president has multiple times said he wants Jack Smith to be criminally indicted.
Talked about this, but just to be clear as day about this, just tell us what you make of the allegations Republicans are making in this referral.
Sure, because this is one of these instances where I know that usually we're very careful to say, it seems like or it appears, mm-hmm. but this is one where there's just no two ways about it that this is preposterous. And the easiest way to do that is to just tell you what is alleged. What is alleged is that Jack Smith lied in response to the following question. He was asked, did you get the content of text messages from members of Congress through a search warrant? Did you get the content of text messages of members of Congress through a search warrant, to which he said, no, I didn't. I only got telephone records through this other process. That is 100% truthful. The fact that Jack Smith also got documents from the National Archives was not asked. He was in any way, shape, or form. So this story is not just about the sort of retribution that we've seen from the Department of Justice. To me, this is the complicity of, in this case, Jim Jordan, who is the signatory of the letter with doing the referral. On its face, it is not perjury. Period. I'd love to. I usually am more careful to say, it seems like, or we don't know everything they have. You cannot read this letter and just in any way view this as perjury.
They're telling us they're going to try it again, and we should listen to them and actually be prepared this time.
Yeah, and in fact, your state of Arizona had its primary on Tuesday, and the Republicans that won there are a sort of slate of election deniers, including Andy Biggs. I mean, Andy Biggs, who's a member of Congress in the Arizona caucus. You served alongside him as a Democrat. He's a Republican, obviously. He'll be the nominee for governor. Alexander Kolodin, Warren Peterson. But Biggs wasn't just he wasn't just someone who sort of was around and voted not to certify. Right. He was one of the more central figures, and he's, running for governor.
Absolutely. And they're all active pushers of election denialism altogether, not just for the 2020 election, for the 2022 election, for the 2024 election. Basically, anytime Democrats win, it must have been stolen from them. It's not just that they have horrible politics and they're horrible politicians. But fact is, if these guys win by some sheer miracle, because I don't think they are, this is pretty much a slate of losers. But if they win, they will actively do whatever this president wants them to do in order for them to secure the 2028 election for Republicans. So, I'm glad that we have a slate of Democrats going to stop, these guys. These are probably the worst of the worst Republicans that are running. Luckily, the Arizona voter is fairly moderate, believes in democracy, whether Democrats, Republicans, or independent, and they're going to stop these crazies from being elected. But it does not mean that we can really trust the DOJ, DHS, or anything that really is going to be led by Donald Trump is not going to act in a nefarious manner come 2026 election. So we have to prepare for every possibility.
But you see them, especially Donald Trump. He has tied everything to the SAVE Act. He goes, affordability, it's a made-up word. Affordability housing, big yawn. I'll only do it if you attach the SAVE Act. So the SAVE Act is one big component, right? SAVE Act, essentially voter suppression. All right, so we got one act right there. Why the obsession with mail-in ballots?
Well, this has been a long-running fascination amongst the election denier movement. One of the central, as I see it, there are two central pillars of MAGAism. One is election denial around the 2020 election. Really, to be MAGA, you have to believe that the 2020 election was rigged. There are all sorts of activists, right-wing activists, anti-voting activists, who spent years saying that there was they had found evidence of ballot stuffing. There were documentaries that ended up being later totally debunked about people acting as mules to stuff ballots. And really what that started as was a backlash, a reaction to measures, to pro-voting measures that emerged when a big thing happened in 2020, which was the pandemic. And so it was harder to go to the polls. People were stuck at home. Congregating in poll sites was going to be riskier. And so all sorts of states and municipalities around the country enacted measures to make it easier to vote, either absentee or early voting or through the mail. And all of those are anathema to people who want to make it harder to vote. And so those pro-access measures were sort of transmuted into this broad conspiracy to steal the election from Donald Trump. And so that's one basically like constant pillar of the MAGA movement. And the other one is being anti-immigrant, which goes back to Trump's, coming down the escalator. And although these things may seem like disparate issues, they are in fact intimately linked through the racist Great Replacement theory that was popularized by Fox News for a very long time, and now has become just a given on the right. Yeah, it's everywhere. And for people who aren't familiar, the Great Replacement theory posits that Democratic or liberal elites, sometimes coded as Jewish people, are quote unquote importing foreigners, typically understood as brown or black skinned, from places that Trump and others refer to in ways that I'm not going to repeat here, and that those liberal elites are bringing in foreigners to quote unquote replace white people by voting and by giving them the vote. And so these two pillars that seem disparate are in fact intimately braided together, and that's why you can understand Trump's twin obsessions with saying that the 2020 election was rigged and unleashing ICE on all these cities throughout the country. These are not separate issues. They are absolutely one and the same. And that is also why you hear people like Steve Bannon saying that we need to have ICE and Border Patrol at polling sites for the coming midterms, because they see these as the same issue, just looked at in slightly different ways.
That would be correct. They are the same issue. Now, you take out the phony charge of racism and all that. This is about American citizens. Whether you're Hispanic American, African American, this is about American citizens. They get to vote. And the invasion was to destroy them, and particularly destroy their way of life and the little bit of wages they currently get. Short break. Back in the war, we're talking interior enforcement.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay. That was Ezra Klein doing the bad imitation of President Trump, but he's one of the key elements on the left, a pollster, and someone that oftentimes has blinding insights, although he's the first to admit he missed the MAGA movement and the rise of populist nationalism. And I think when we refer to MAGA, we need to go back and refer to it always as a populist nationalist movement. A populist, take your number two pencil out, it's a populist nationalist movement. And we've gone too long with not enough nationalism. And that is now at the core of what we have to do to turn this around. So let's take this in 5 parts, or a couple parts to break that down. We'll bring on Mark Morgan in a second. In coming up to the 14 and 15, or the presidential election in 16, the harbinger that something was afoot, given all the work we had done at Breitbart and all the work we had done with people like the people in the Mass Deportation Coalition today, in the victory of Dave Bratt, I think in June of 2014, where he beat for the first time in American history, never happened before in the history of the Republic, and hasn't happened since, a sitting majority leader, Eric Cantor, who spent more on one campaign dinner, I think $125,000 than Bratt raised overall, a complete, total unknown. Economics professor from Randolph-Macon College, with the support of Breitbart, which I ran, and Laura Ingram's radio show, which was then 9 to noon. A young woman who was her producer eventually came to work for me at Breitbart and in the White House, Julia Hahn. She was the Natalie Winters of her time. Same prep school in L.A., same go to University of Chicago and graduate in a couple of years. Another absolute genius. Was in back of the Dave Bratt campaign because he had no money. Unbelievable upset victory in a primary, and that puts stuff in full stop. Trump then takes on the Republican consensus of kind of the Bush think of just let people flood into the country, happy talk about border security, but have no interest at all. Work with the Chamber of Commerce. This is why Texas was so screwed up, right? Work with big ag. Work with the construction industry. Work on as many illegal aliens as we can get in here and work, and suppress wages for American workers. That's what's going to be. Trump shattered that with the concept of build the wall. We're going to stop it. And remember that victory, because it resonated everywhere, even up in the blue, when we pierced the blue wall in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That bet paid off, and so we won. Then President Trump tried to build the wall, the big fight. Paul Ryan and those guys stopped him every step of the way. Then the 2020 election is stolen. Turns out that is providential because those years in the wilderness let us sharpen the axe, okay? Now, the downside of that is that the illegitimate Biden regime, having stolen the 2020 election, worked with NGOs, dark money groups, the radicals in the Democratic Party, and basically had a 22 million person invasion of our country. Commander Bovino tells you, hey, it's 100 million illegal aliens here. And I tend to agree that the number's a lot higher than 22. My point is, if you can't deal with the 22, you're never going to solve the problem. So we got 22 million sitting there. They have to go. All of them have to go. That's the concept of these mass deportations. Trump wins in this come from behind that, quite frankly, is probably even more monumental than the first time, because the first time we came out of nowhere. They didn't know how to handle our nomenclature. They didn't know how to handle the ideas. The American people, it resonated with the American people, but the political class and the media class could never even think through. Hillary Clinton still sitting there spouting neoliberal, neocon globalism, right? Like the puppet she was, wanting to be president since she was 9 years old. And we defeated. The second time, they could understand, hey, these guys have been thinking this through, and we know Trump's moves. We know his parlor tricks. We can stop him. An even bigger victory in 2024. And once again, propelled by the populist nationalist MAGA movement. It was all grassroots. It was all voter engagement. It was all canvassing and door knocking, because Trump was outspent by a huge amount, particularly Kamala Harris in her $1.2 billion final sprint. So here we are now. President Trump, in the first 60 days of his in office, seals the border. The border sealed, as he says, a couple of people come. Now, do you get full political credit for that in a coming election? You just don't. That's just reality. You get a ton of credit that you did it. When you say you're going to do something, it gets done, and that is huge. But like people say, well, what have you done for me today? Now we're in a situation of we have 22 million folks here, and I asked Mark to come on here because there's a total confusion about the math, and there's a total confusion in the math because we're blending a lot of things together. We still have a massive border security operation going, and that border security operation is not simply building the wall. It's turning hombres back at the very beginning. Go, no, you're not going to get in our country anymore. We've got the military down there. You have enhanced enforcement. You've got the Coast Guard. You're not letting them fly in here. It's really a very sophisticated system, and it's working. But you still have the festering sore of 22 million illegal aliens. Of now, you have the Marxist jihadists that control the major cities of the country that are going John C. Calhoun on you in nullification. Go, no, we're not even going to let ICE officers come in here, right? And as Mamdani says, we're not going to let ICE come into New York City to take anybody out because they're bothering Americans. And the response is, yo, Ugandan Marxist jihadists, those actually aren't Americans. They're foreigners, and they're all going to go. Now, we're going to have a test of political wills about that, and that's all to come. Mark Morgan, can you do me a favor? First off, your background in all of this, your expertise in this, before I ask you the question, can you bifurcate the ongoing, the greatness of our border security, what's happening, what's ongoing, from what we call interior enforcement, sir?
Yeah, Steve, look, I think you've already done a pretty good job. Let's take border security first. And I agree with you. I thought that we had achieved the most secure border in history, Trump 45, when I was commissioner. And now it's hard for me to say it's better now than even when I was commissioner. But we still have a ways to go with border security, right? We're not completely there yet. But as to your point, what we're doing, though, every single day, we're taking a step in the right direction. President Trump, with respect to border security, is giving them the policies, is giving them the funding and the resources, and just as important, the right strategy to continue to take positive steps to secure the border more each and every single day. But that is separate and apart, as you just described, from interior enforcement. Look, when we, during the last campaign, look, we were there at the RNC. We saw people, they were chanting and holding up signs that said mass deportation now. We knew what we were voting for. We know that when President Trump promised mass deportations, that he was talking about interior enforcement. Stephen, to your point, he was talking about deporting the 20 million plus. I agree with you. I think it's much higher that are already inside in the interior of the United States. That's what we were talking about. And Stephen, look, I don't get comfort in saying this, but it's that definition of interior enforcement that going after the 20 plus million that are already here is what I'm saying. It's not being done to the extent that it can be and should be. It's not being done to the extent that we're securing the border. But we've got to make sure that border security, what CBP and what the Coast Guard is doing to prevent threats from coming in, is completely different from mass deportations with respect to interior enforcement.
Now, part of the reason this is that they did some polling, the political operation did some polling, and they went to this conference. Actually, it wasn't at Mar-a-Lago, but it was down in Florida, I think, one of these offsites they have, and they have all these consultants come in, and they talk about the issues, and this was, I think, back in January, February, and I believe it was James Blair, the head of the political operation, did this polling and said, the phrase we can never use again is mass deportations. And from that moment, that is the phrase that should never be spoken. I can tell you that is absolutely 1,000% incorrect. What people want is they want to see mass deportations. And the deportations they want to see, you can't triage them. They obviously want to see the bad hombres out, right? The worst, and then it goes down. But that phrase in itself implies you're not going to get to the rest of them. You have to have mass deportations of all of them. If we don't, it's an amnesty program. You're only going to get more back in here. When Democrats take back over, they're going to flood it again. You have to take your stand now. Do you think, and you went around and saw the enthusiasm, was there any doubt that the American people, and it still polls at like 67%, was there any doubt in your mind when you went around that the American people are sitting there going, we have to have mass deportations, we have to get these illegal aliens out of the country?
Stephen, not only was there no doubt in my mind, but there's also no doubt that that's why President Trump is back in the White House. That's why he's back behind the resolute desk. Make no mistake, mass deportations. And again, we need to be very clear. There's been extreme successes with respect to border enforcement and border security, as you explained. But that is separate from mass deportations. That is separate than what we voted for, what was promised. When we talk about mass deportations, we're talking about interior enforcement, about the whole of government approach, going after those that are already inside the United States illegally. And that means going after all of them. That means using an Eisenhower-based strategy that he used in the 50s that was very successful. And that is a quantity-based strategy over quality, to your point. Look, the worst of the worst strategy. First of all, Stephen, look, I don't like that phrase. And as a strategy, it has not been effective. It is inefficient when you are going after what we know is a very small subset. Look, we're going after criminals is really a cloak for non-enforcement. It literally, that was the Biden-Obama administration strategy. We're just doing it better in this administration. And Steve, if I can, real quick, let me give you an example of where it's confusing for the American people and where I don't think that there's a level of transparency that's there. Right now, the stats that are being pushed out right now is a 62-38 split. And what they're touting as success is that we have deported, of those that have deported, which those numbers are still low overall, is that 62% of them, to your point, have been criminals, the worst of the worst, while 38% have been non-criminals. Well, first of all, let's break that down real quick. First of all, the 38% non-criminals, we know a good majority of those were actually collateral apprehensions as part of the criminal operations. But here's what's equally as important that people need to understand, is that the so-called worst of the worst is a small subset of the millions and millions of illegal aliens that are here. So in reality, what the 62-38 split means is, and I'm being conservative here, is that we're devoting 75% of our resources going after about 9% of the illegal alien population. That is a Biden Obama administration policy and strategy. We're just doing it better. But that means the overwhelming majority of those that are here illegally are not being aggressively, specifically targeted for removal.
So hang on for a second. If you can hold through, I just want to hold you through another break. Ben Berquam is going to join us also. And my question is that given the radical of the Democratic Socialists and the Working Family Party and these radical Democrats, they understand that their lifeblood politically is illegal aliens and foreign nationals that are coming in these bogus immigration plans. 8.2, I think it's 8.2, 8.5 million people in New York City. 3.7 million, I believe, are foreign born. This is Mamdani's power. And right now, he's John C. Calhoun. He has nullified every essential immigration law. Says, I'm not going to enforce it. In fact, we'll be arresting ICE officers as they come in here. Worse than the nullification that led to the Civil War of John C. Calhoun in the crowd down south in South Carolina. These guys are 10 times worse, and it's going to drive us to a very dark place unless it's confronted today. That cannot win politically at the polling. So we're going to talk about Marxist communism. You run around now with your hair on fire. They're all communists. Get to the beating heart of it. Don't try to play your games with the Chamber of Commerce and then start calling Mamdani a communist. Get to the heart of why he's got political support. Get to the heart of how they're defying President Trump's core policies that he won on that are still amazingly important to the American people and supported by the American people. Mark Morgan, Ben Berquam, next in the War Room.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Mamdani exists because of the rot in our education system. It's turned into an indoctrination system to turn people to hate this country, hate what this country stood for, to hate capitalism because there's no capitalists in our system. It's a system with, 80% of the people are outside the capitalist system, which has to be rectified, and there's ways to rectify that. And it's not universal basic income, which is just another, the oligarchs' method of giving you tip money, socialism, giving you tip money, where they take all the wealth and the power. Mamdani's core strength comes from the invasion. In the immigration laws that we have, and E.J. Antonio, I think, is going to try to join me tomorrow morning. We've got more working age men out of the workforce than ever in the history of the United States. And Victor Davis Hanson gave something. Oh, well, Bannon's got the stats wrong. I don't have the stats wrong, bro. I've forgotten more about this than you'll ever know. Just stick to your neocon bad advice in Iran and the Middle East. Okay, stay in your lane. But we now have Mamdani, and they're very upfront. They look at Minneapolis, and as we said at the time, they look at Minneapolis as a surrender, and they're dug down this. So when the House Republicans go out, and we're going to now have this thing compare and contrast socialism with what we offer, you got to offer something. And one thing is not some theoretical. Let's go read Karl Marx, right? It's practical, and you see the failures of communism and Marxism throughout history. However, in right today, you see that it is in back of this invasion of the United States of America, and that has to be taken care of. And if we blink on this, you're not going to have a country. Full stop. Okay? This is kind of where the rubber meets the road. Mark Morgan, what do we need to do? You have these officials in the greatest cities in the world, in the United States, New York City, Boston, Los Angeles, Chicago, Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, and many more, Denver, many, many, many more, that are defying federal law and saying, guess what? It doesn't matter. These people are going to stay here. We're going to get them on welfare. They're going to be part of the system, and we don't care what you have to say about it, sir.
So first of all, Stephen, I think that to some degree, the Republicans have created individuals like this. And this is what I mean. We saw what happened in Minneapolis. And what did we do? I think to a large degree, a lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill, they blinked. They backed down. Right. And I think it was purely political. They were saying, hey, this is going to impact us in the midterms. Instead of just taking a step back and say, hey, let's rethink our strategy. Let's improve our strategy, but keep going 100% to mass deportations for all the reasons you articulated, which I agree. We blinked. And so now some of the Democrats, like this individual, feels empowered, feels that they can do stuff like this. So now I think what this requires is there should be no question. If somebody interferes with a lawful federal operation, they should be arrested. They should be tried and prosecuted for that criminal violation. We should be going after, not just threatening that, but actually doing that. We saw that happen to a judge in Minneapolis, although she was, really given a slap on the hand. But we need to see more of that when that happens. For him to come out, that's just political posturing. It's not going to happen unless we cave politically. And I think we have been seeing some of that in certain areas and across the board strategically, Stephen.
when you look at the numbers, so I'm going to have to digress on Monday because we've been working on this for a couple of days, and it's going to take over the weekend to get it. If you look at the overall numbers, the numbers themselves are not as bad as they were as far as generic ballot, and it's much closer than people think. And of course, this whole fight is over right now. About 15 to let's say maybe 20 swing districts. 11 or 13 of those districts, Trump won in 24. Folks, come on. The difference, the big gap, the difference that the Republicans do not want to talk about is intensity. The intensity gap. The Democrats are fired up like never before. Small donors are fired up. Why? They see the ability, they see the end of Trumpism, and they see it in 100 days. They see that if they take the House, they will impeach Trump. They won't start the trial until 2028, but they see the ability to stop Trump, to impeach him, Russ Vought, and many other people, not just the president. They see a way to end Trumpism and to end the MAGA movement, and it's 100 days away. That's why they are jacked up like nobody's business. And it's incumbent upon us to get the intensity up. How do you get the intensity up? Well, let me think for a second. Oh, yeah, let's go back to core values. Let's go back to the things that won for us. And why did they win? They resonated with the American people. Mark, what would you say the couple of building blocks? What's the couple of things we would have to do right now to get interior enforcement up enough that it started to resonate with the American people? We were actually getting the job done, like President Trump has done so magnificently on the border.
Yeah, Stephen, look, I think you just said it perfectly about the intensity. That's what I'm hearing. And one of the things that they're frustrated is the lack of mass deportations. And this is easy. Look, I'll go back. You cannot devote 75% of your resources going after 9%, a small subset of the illegal alien population. It does not add up. You have to shift your strategy from a quality base to a quantity base, just like Eisenhower did. Look, when I spent 20 years in the FBI, we had a multitude of threats: counterterrorism, counterintelligence, public corruption, traditional violent crime. The list goes on and on. Can you imagine if we told the public that we're going to take 75% of the FBI resources and only target one of the vast, complex threats that we have against this country? That's absurd and it's ineffective. But that's essentially what's happening now. So what I would suggest is we have to fundamentally change our strategy from that quality base to a quantity base. And we have to look and go after the core issues driving illegal immigration. We have 1.5 million illegal aliens in this country with final orders of removal from a judge. We should be aggressively and actively targeting them, as well as the criminals. That's a given. We have hundreds of thousands of visa overstays that we should aggressively target. And the number one thing that we should target, work site enforcement. We know the greatest incentive that drives illegal immigration is those coming here to work illegally. We should be targeting those employers. We should be prosecuting those employers, and we should be aggressively targeting worksite enforcement. If you do that, I promise you, the numbers will skyrocket, and the numbers of those voluntarily departing will go up, and fewer will start coming because they know they're no longer going to be able to abuse our laws.
Morgan, what are your coordinates on social media? People want to know more about this and know more about your thinking. Where do they go?
You know, right now, I'm taking a hike, Stephen, so just you and me.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Mark Morgan.
You bet.
We'll push that out. Let's make sure you get it out to his thinking. Berquam is going to be with us. He's talked to some of the senior officials over at DHS. He's going to be with us. Berquam's always the tip of the spear. Take your phone out. Find out how you can get into a gold IRA and do it today, tax deferred from the 401k or IRA you already have. Text Bannon. That would be me, your humble servant. Bannon at 989898. You get the ultimate guide for investing in gold and precious metals in the age of Trump. It's not the era of Trump. It's the age of Trump. We're living in the age of Trump. Make sure you understand it. Talk to Philip Patrick and the team. Okay, the next hour, we may be shifting to a bigger, broader, all-out war in the Middle East. All next in the War Room.